Hello and welcome to the COVID-19 Compliance for Supervisor and Marshal course. The idea behind the course is to enhance the awareness of everybody in the construction industry to the point that we all contribute to establishing and maintaining a safe place of work for everybody. This course has been designed to prepare selected personnel to the role of COVID-19 compliance supervisors and marshals on all construction sites within the UK and Ireland. I am Colin Gears, I'm head of QHSE for O'Neill and Brennan, and we've developed the course in partnership with ETC Awards Limited and the NHS Infection Control. What does it require? Personnel returning to site after furlough or isolation must have been briefed on the revised Principal Contractors Construction Phase Plan, with particular emphasis on the COVID-19 control protocols to be implemented on the site. They must also be briefed on their own company risk assessments and method statements. On receiving this, personnel must sign a declaration stating they're fully aware of the requirements and do not carry or have the symptoms of COVID-19. Have a brief recap and look at the symptoms. Ensuring the idea behind the supervisor or marshal role is to ensure that no person with symptoms attends site. It's very much dependent on the honesty of people involved, but the standard things we're looking for is a fever, a temperature of 38 degrees centigrade or more, a cough, shortness of breath, or any breathing difficulties. If any of those are shown, then we must exclude people. Under the current guidance by government and Public Health England, anybody displaying these symptoms must self-isolate and not attend site or any other workplace for 14 days. Additionally, any person living with someone who's self-isolating or awaiting a COVID-19 test must restrict their movements for 14 days. Looking at some other specific areas, one main one is travel. And under current guidance, we all know that we must avoid using public transport in all but essential journeys. And if we are using public transport, we must maintain social distancing protocols. One advantage is to travel during off-peak hours wherever possible. If we are using cars and vans for travel with the window open to allow good ventilation. And if we're sharing a car or a van, sit apart at the maximum distance to maintain the greatest separation possible. Looking at social distancing, we all know that we must ensure that workers maintain a 2-metre separation insofar as possible when working, when using toilets, using the canteen, drying rooms to hang up clothes, etc. Where proximity work requires personnel to work within the 2-metre distance, it must never be face-to-face and must not exceed periods of 15 minutes. One thing to note with the 15-minute duration is once it's finished, there should be full sanitation completed before another close proximity work activity is undertaken. Social etiquette protocol, what the supervisor and marshal observes and advises on. We're all familiar with this. Hands, we must ensure personnel are washing hands regularly and thoroughly or sanitising, and sufficient facilities are on site and are provided and maintained to allow this to happen. The cough etiquette or respiratory hygiene, ensuring people cough and sneeze into sleeves or elbows, always cover up, dispose of any tissues used in waste receptacles, and make sure that the waste receptacles themselves are safely disposed of once they're full. And cleaning areas, ensuring that all frequently touched objects and surfaces are regularly cleaned and disinfected. Prevention of cross-contamination. One of the principal areas of concern is the site entry and exit points. And the potential for cross-contamination is higher at site entry and exit points, and where there are high levels of surface contact points, such as in welfare areas, site walkways, stair access on the handrails, etc. If we look at the graphic to the right-hand side, we can see that the use of biometrics, signatures, and all that sort of thing has been removed, and we have a person logging people on by hand without any contact whatsoever. To summarise in a number of bullet points, the control measures associated with social distancing: turnstiles to be bypassed with open door access to site, or thumb access devices should be bypassed or turned off, staggered start times, finishing times to reduce queues, have multiple entry points depending on site numbers, each following the same protocols of isolation, security guards or another to record all names rather than having multiple persons signing in using a shared pen and a shared register, restricts entry to workers and essential visitors only, sanitisation stations should be in position at all site entry points, regularly clean common contact surfaces in reception, office, access control and delivery areas, for example, scanners, turnstiles, screens, telephone handsets, desks, and particularly during peak flow times. Reduce the number of people in attendance at site inductions and toolbox talks, and consider holding them outdoors wherever possible, maintaining the 2-metre social distancing rule. Any delivery drivers arriving on site should remain in their vehicles if the load will allow it, and must also wash or clean their hands before unloading goods and materials if the need arises. All persons entering the site must be directed to wash their hands, and additional hand washing stations should be provided where possible. Touch points should be minimised with a hands-free approach wherever possible. On access routes throughout the site, one-way systems should be implemented where possible, barrier gates should be wedged open, and touch points should be cleaned regularly. At one point here to note, if a barrier gate is part of the fire control, then we need to determine on site whether or not that would compromise any fire protection procedures. Cleaning to prevent contamination. Enhanced cleaning procedures should be in place across all sites to prevent cross-contamination, particularly in communal areas and at touch points. These includes taps and washing facilities, toilet flush and seats, door handles and push plates, handrails on staircases and corridors, lift and hoist controls, machinery and equipment controls, food preparation and eating surfaces, communications equipment, keyboards, photocopiers and other office equipment. Rubbish collection and storage points should be increased and emptied regularly throughout and at the end of each day. And regular cleaning of site welfare facilities, handrails and touch points should be undertaken. From this slide, we look at contact points within a vehicle, but it's useful to note that although we're talking principally about the social distancing etiquette on sites, it's something that reflects out into our normal lives anyway. So everybody or most people will either drive or get into a car or a vehicle. They will touch their doors, their gates. And so all of the controls we're suggesting on this short training session apply equally outside of the site as they do on it. If we just look at the graphic that's presented to us at the moment, even though it's a left-hand drive vehicle, all of the components are there in any vehicle. So we can see the steering wheel, the gear stick, handbrakes, door handles, the entertainment control, steering column, all of these things, elbow rests, seat position controls, door frames, they're all touched at one time or another by the driver or any passenger. And as such, attract the need for regular cleaning and desanitization. Looking at tools and equipment and plant that are used on site. And again, we can reflect this into the home environment. Any tools and equipment should be properly sanitized to prevent cross-contamination, particularly if they're going to be used by more than one person. Arrangements for one individual to use the same tool is a perfect idea. The same with equipment and plant, and as far as possible, do it. Make available the cleaning material for all tools to be wiped down with disinfectant between each user. Yes, that's quite a burden, but it needs to be done. You can also organise work practices to reduce, eliminate or reduce transmission points and communicate and coach site personnel on the same protocol. As we've said with the vehicle, cabs and touch points of site vehicles and plant, mobile elevating work platforms, excavators, cranes and all other earth moving or load moving plant are to be thoroughly cleaned, and a cleaning regime by the plant operators themselves should be maintained daily or more frequently if there's going to be interchange of use ongoing or thereafter. Some sites are considering the provision of stickers for tools and equipment and mobile plant to encourage and promote disinfection. That's not a bad idea. And here on the next graphic, we can see the contact points on a mini digger. It's just an example we're using, but you can see that similar to the social vehicle or the car or the van, the points of contact are quite myriad. Let's look at social distancing. We're all probably tired of the amount of times this is bombarded to us, but it is one of the most important and critical factors to protect lives and save people. Social distance or physical distancing is a set of interventions or measures taken to prevent the spread of COVID-19 by maintaining the physical distance between people, thus reducing the number of times people come into close contact with each other. In order to slow the transmission rate of COVID-19, a distance of 2 meters has been recommended by the government, Public Health England, and by the HSE. However, there are times on a construction site and during construction operations where the 2 meter distance may not be possible. And so we look at where proximity work is necessary, then no face-to-face should be allowed, and any activity that is undertaken should be restricted to a 15-minute maximum duration. After that, personal sanitation must be undertaken before engaging the short-term 15-minute rule again. This slide shows a workplace review strategy, which as a flowchart can be posted up in key areas as a reminder for people to ask the questions themselves and help them in the decision to make as to whether or not a task or a job or a function can indeed be performed. On the first box, can the task be completed following 2 meters social distancing? And the selection is yes or no. So if we follow the yes trail, yes, can transmission points be eliminated? It then splits again to yes and no. And if it's yes, we can continue. If it's no, it then offers us another alternative. Can transmission points be cleaned before and after use? Again, yes and no. If it's yes, we can continue. If it's no, it flicks us back to the no box directly under whether or not the task can be completed, where it looks for another work method or sequence to be engaged. If it's no on that case, it then goes to the box where it offers an opportunity to consider other preventative measures. If we can put those in place, including the 15-minute rule, that transmits to yes, and we can continue with the task. If it's no, the obvious solution there is to stop work and contact site management for further advice. In this section, we're looking at guidance on the role and duties of a COVID-19 compliance supervisor or marshal for sites of all sizes, and this is in line with government's recommendations to monitor social distancing. It's important that the right candidate, the right person, and anybody selected as a deputy are appointed and selected as compliance supervisors or marshals. One of the key elements of the success of getting this message across is that people selected must have good communication skills. It's depending on the size of a project. The project itself must assess how many C19 compliance supervisors or marshals are required. This is going to be depending on the size, floor size, area size, the surrounding environment, the number of personnel attending the site, and any work activity that has to be monitored. The larger the site, the more intricate the detail. It might mean that we need more people to act as monitors. One thing that should be considered and implemented on all sites is that it should not just be restricted to these people who are identified as supervisors or marshals. Everybody has an equal duty to take responsibility for making sure that the protocols are applied and indeed work. The recommended ratio at the moment is 1 to 30, and that can be changed obviously depending on the activities on each site. So it's not cast in stone. It is certainly not written in any government advice. It is a number that we have looked at as being a reasonable number in the first instance. So let's have a look at the role of the compliance supervisor and marshal. We consider the role of the compliance supervisor and marshal is to monitor the day-to-day site activities to ensure social distancing and hygiene rules are being maintained to protect health and to reduce the spread or the possible spread of the C19 virus. These key personnel should be clearly identifiable on site with a distinguishable high-vis vest with C19 compliance supervisor or marshal written on them, similar to the illustration provided to the right-hand side of the screen as you look at it. The person undertaking the role must have received training in what the role will entail, such as this. Insurance compliance to the 2-meter social distancing rule and good hygiene is not the sole responsibility of the C19 compliance supervisor or marshal. The role must be supported by all site management and workers, as previously discussed in the last slide. Site management must communicate to all on-site personnel details of the appointed C19 compliance supervisors and marshals and the need to follow any directions they may give. Under any circumstances, a C19 compliance supervisor or marshal must not put themselves at risk whilst carrying out their duties. All C19 compliance supervisors and marshals must have a structure or framework to follow within the organisation on site to be effective in preventing the spread of COVID-19. This structure must be regularly audited and managed to ensure it works and, of course, protects all on site. Failure to take this seriously could result in an outbreak of COVID-19 on site, which we want to avoid. Looking at responsibilities of a C19 compliance supervisor, C19 supervisor responsibilities and duties fall broadly into 2 categories: proactive day-to-day duties and reactive emergency duties. Let's have a look at the day-to-day duties. Ensure personnel on site have completed relevant COVID-19 questionnaires and have signed declarations. Maintain a log of regular monitoring of COVID-19 controls on site. As for the marshal, being a constant on-site presence to monitor compliance with social distancing of 2 meters between all personnel on site, of course with the exception of the planned close working 15-minute rule. In instances where there is non-conformance with social distancing, the supervisor, the C19 compliance supervisor, is to intervene. The marshal should also ensure there's sufficient up-to-date signage erected on site to educate all personnel about the COVID-19 controls on site, and this should accommodate any changes that are implemented by government advice or site advice moving forward. Continuing on the proactive day-to-day duties, at all times promote and coach good hygiene practices to all personnel. Ensure regular cleaning of welfare facilities, handrails, door handles, etc. is undertaken. Make sure there's enough hand wash, liquid, soap and hand sanitizers and they're replenished as often as required. Check hot water and hand drying facilities are available. Make representations to site management with regard to any COVID-19 concerns raised by site personnel to the C19 compliance team. Positive day-to-day duties continued. Ensure site personnel are adhering to staggered break time schedules and limiting numbers in canteens, drying rooms, smoking areas, all cognizance of the 2-metre social distancing guideline. Ensure site personnel leaving site at designated breaks remove their site PPE and continue to adhere to social distancing guidelines when they're off-site. Report any areas of non-compliance to site management and ensure these are addressed, not with a view to be confrontational or sneaky. It is literally to maintain a high standard with the aim of protecting everybody's well-being. It may be that we also have to consider the provision of additional controls for exceptional circumstances, and that could be with task intensities or maybe a collection of people at a critical point in program where it's necessary to have to offer more stringent management for proximity working. And one of the key things for anybody appointed with a COVID-19 supervisor or marshal ticket is to keep themselves aware with the up-to-date, day-to-day briefings, HSE guidelines, Public Health England and the Construction Leadership Council information that comes out. Most of this will be interpreted and placed on site as updates anyway, but it is a key responsibility of an individual holding this appointment to make sure they themselves keep up to speed. Reactive duties. Well, when the main role of the team is to prevent the spread on site, there is also the potential that we can't ignore, where an individual on site may experience COVID-19 symptoms and where the C19 compliance supervisor and marshal then needs to react. Informing site management if there is a confirmed case or somebody showing symptoms. Isolating an individual with symptoms in a specific isolation room or segregated area away from other personnel. Following any site protocol for individuals with COVID-19 symptoms. First one is being sent home. Ideally, if we are going to send them home, is there anybody that can assist, not from site, but possibly from the person's own family? This reduces the risk of them infecting anybody during their journey home. And then once they are home, get them to contact their GP or, if they are serious symptoms, NHS 111. Also, the compliance supervisor can assist an on-site contact tracing should there be a confirmed case of COVID-19. This is to identify anybody who may be coming into proximity of the identified problem, and they themselves may then have to undergo a forced isolation period to ensure that if the symptoms develop, they are contained, and if they're not, then it's safe for them to continue in the work environment. That completes the information on the course. It's very short, very succinct. I trust you found it informative. What we require you to do now is to move on to the confirmatory test. It's a sequence of 12 questions with a multi-choice selection. The question itself is quite straightforward. The answers, hopefully, after this information, will be equally straightforward. If you have any questions about the test or about the course afterwards, please pass them through your own QHSE department or your site managers, and we will endeavour to act on any information or support that you can offer us. So good luck with the test, and I trust you found the course informative.